Hi, it's Mama Mo.
Come join me today as we go outside the Kusina and discover the story behind maple syrup.
Hello, Moncescans, mga anak. Guess where we are? We are here in Bruce's Mill, located in Stouffville, just 30 minutes away from Toronto. And we are going to attend the Sugarbush Maple Syrup Festival. I know snow is still on the ground, but believe me, spring is here. And when spring arrives, the sap in the maple trees begin to thaw, and that is when we can collect the sap to make maple syrup. So here we go. Let's go to the Maple Syrup Festival.
Walking along these trails make me think of Laura Ingalls from Little House on the Prairie. Too bad there's no maple taffy making today.
Look, here's one of the pails where they collect the sap from the maple tree. So there's a cover to keep it clean, and this metal spout here, this is called a stile. Okay, and if you look inside, there is the sap. Nothing is coming out right now, probably because it's cold, but this is the way the early European settlers collected sap from the trees. However, did you know that it was the indigenous people of North America that discovered getting the sap from the maple trees? What they did was use their bone or stone tools, and they would also collect the sap but put them into birch bark containers called mokuk. They collected those sap in the mokuk and then put boiled rocks into the container so that the water would evaporate, and then that would leave them with the maple syrup.
Creating the oldest known method of processing the sap that we get from the tree and turning it into maple syrup or maple sugar. Now this is obviously a long time ago, this method. This would have been done by the indigenous people who lived in this area before European contact. So as you can see, no metal tools are involved, no metal container. We cannot heat the container directly. So the way we're going to boil is actually by taking a rock from our fire, and we have to boil it like this and try and remove all the water like this. Okay, so as we add the hot rocks, we're heating up the sap and trying to boil off all that water. Now this is going to take about a week to do this. You're going to try to remove as much water as you can and be left with the sweet natural maple sugar that's inside the sap.
If the tree trunk is really wide, then you can put 2 pails to collect the sap.
Did you know that Canada is the top producer and exporter of maple syrup in the world? The early settlers had better tools to collect the sap.
Any one of those 3 trees.
Here I tried, I really did, but I don't think I'll survive as a pioneer woman.
Ramon will get the maple for me. So this is a more modern way. Woohoo! Shoulder yoke. Here's Pa from Little House on the Prairie collecting the sap. Go, Pa!
All the pails of sap were collected in this large barrel.
So you have to get together as a community to do the maple syrup processing. The first big kettle would have primarily sap. So then after a while, once the sap, they've boiled off some of the water, you can move into the next kettle. And then after getting rid of even more water, you put it in the finishing kettle, the smallest one, and finish it off into syrup. Through this, they would take it, put it in an oven, and actually drive out all the moisture to make a maple sugar. And
Free maple syrup tasting! The color of the maple syrup depends on when it's made and how long it boils. The darker one has a stronger flavor. In comparison, it's close to Filipino panucha but tastes a lot better.
Sugar Shack.
Now we get to see the modern method of collecting sap.
welcome to the Sugar Shack.
Now, this big beautiful machine in front of you is called the Evaporator. This thing does exactly what it says on the tin. So you may have seen those green tubes running through the trees just outside the shack. Those are what we use to collect sap these days. No more bucket. Anyway, so we have those tubes linking here to the sugar shack, aided on its way with the help of our vacuum pump, which is that big cylindrical machine in the window over there. The sap is then stored up top in that big holding tank. The holding tank feeds these pipes into the first part of the evaporator known as the flue pan. The flue pan is a big wide surface area allowing for a lot of very quick evaporation. As it thickens, the sap gets heavier and sinks to the bottom. There are channels in the bottom of the flue pan that allow the sap to travel from the flue pan over to here called the flat pan. And this flat pan has barriers in it. These barriers have small gaps in the bottom of them. So as the sap thickens, it moves under the barriers, but then it will hit thicker sap and move to the top. This encourages very even evaporation. This is also the hottest part of the machine because it's directly over the fire. By the time it gets here, it's at its thickest point and it's ready to be extracted. We take a bucket with a cloth filter in it, pour out the sap, and bring it over here to the finishing pan. This finishing pan sits on top of a propane-powered stove. You see, we need to get the sap to 105 degrees Celsius. While it cooks, the sugar begins to caramelize. It is at this point and this point only that maple syrup actually gets its color. There is golden, amber, dark, and berry red. Many people think the sweetness is determined by its color. This is not true. Remember, they are 66% sugar. What does change is the actual flavor of the maple. As the maple is allowed to cook and develop, it becomes richer and more potent. So if you like the taste of maple, you want a darker syrup. If you prefer a milder flavor, you want a lighter syrup. There is only one time you can actually collect maple sap, and that is at the end of winter and the beginning of spring. Freezing temperatures during the night, warm temperatures during the day, so you keep getting that inertia.
It takes 40 buckets of sap to make 1 bucket of maple syrup.
Now I guess it's time for me to bake with maple syrup. Watch out for my coming video on oats, honey, and maple bread. Thanks for watching.